Hello there, it is Peggy McColl, and I want to welcome you back to the Manifestation Podcast. We are here to help you manifest your every desire. For this particular Manifestation Podcast, we're going to be talking about the positive side of negative emotions, because negative emotions are valuable resources to help you understand why you are feeling the way you're feeling, and you have an opportunity to change how you're feeling. The truth is that you are always in control of how you feel. You may say words like, he made me feel, or she made me feel, or they made me feel. But the truth is, no one makes you feel anything. You decide what you're going to feel. You're the one that's in control of that. So if you're feeling emotions that are not empowering, then you have an opportunity to change that. So in this session, I'm going to talk to you about some very valuable information that I came upon many, many years ago. And it's really the basis of one of my books, a book called Your Destiny Switch. Your Destiny Switch is a book that was published in 2007 by Hay House. This book's subtitle is Master Your Key Emotions and Attract the Life of Your Dreams. The reason why it says key emotions is because we're all unique beings. You're a different person than me. Your neighbor is different than you. We're all very unique, and we come to this earthly plane and we build and grow our own emotional muscles. But when you understand the nature and the power of your emotions, and you make choices, decisions, take action as far as changing negative or destructive emotions into empowering and supportive emotions, you're going to find that everything in your life is going to go so much smoother. Before I got into personal development, which was well over 40 years ago, I was pretty much in a negative emotional state most of the time, the majority of the time. I was sad, I was frustrated, I was angry, I was insecure, I didn't feel I was worthy. So I had a lot of stuff going on within me that was non-supportive. But I made a decision. The decision that I made very early on in my study of personal development was the following. I made a decision that I would change my life, that at first I would get myself out of the emotional pain. You see, when you're involved in negative emotions, destructive emotions like frustration, anger, remorse, guilt, worry, fear, anything like that, it doesn't feel good. And when you're feeling those emotions all the time, over and over and over again, it's actually a very destructive way of being, because you're an energetic person. You're full of emotions. Your emotions are expressing energy out from you and drawing to you like energy. So if you're a negative person, which is what I was like many years ago, and you're feeling and connecting to these negative emotions every single day, what are you going to draw to you? More negativity, more experiences, more of the things that you don't want. But when you're unaware of what you're actually doing and how powerful of a being you are and how you can create and destroy, then you start to make some new choices. And that is exactly what I did. I made some new choices to be a more positive person, to focus more on the positive side of emotions. But does that mean that I never feel a negative emotion? Of course not. Everyone feels a negative emotion. I'm going to give you a story or share a story with you of something that happened to me a few years ago. And the reason why I share this with you is it was my most horrific experience of my life. And so I want to share this with you because it's a great example of how you can turn the negative emotions over to the positive emotions. So what happened was my grandson, James, who I'm very close with, who I love to the moon and back. I mean, there's no words to explain how much I love my grandson or how much I love my son or my family. There's just no words. And so what had happened was my grandson, James, had been with me And we had gone for a bike ride, went out to a movie. He slept over at Grandma and Grandpa's house. The next day I brought him back and he was fine. He was perfectly fine. He went swimming that day, went for a bike ride with his mom. He was perfectly fine. But somehow in the middle of the night, he woke up and he started vomiting, urinating. Obviously, there was something wrong. He looked catatonic, like there was nothing there. And so my son and my daughter-in-law raced him to the hospital. Fortunately, they met the ambulance on the way. But what had happened was James had gone into convulsive seizures and he was seizing nonstop. Now, I heard after the fact from a neurologist at the Children's Hospital that most children's seizures last a minute or two. They don't last for a long period of time. James ended up in seizures for 2 hours and 45 minutes while he was at the hospital. So they really worked very diligently on stopping the seizures. But what had happened was he stopped breathing. And thank God they brought him back. But then he ended up in a coma and he was hooked up to all these machines and he was in the Children's Hospital in intensive care. They didn't know what happened. They didn't know what caused it. They just knew that something was very seriously wrong. And so the hospital started doing test after test after test and to try and figure out what was going on here. Now, for me, I got a call at 1 o'clock in the morning from my daughter-in-law's mom. It was Christine. And she said, Peggy, get to the hospital now. James is being taken there in an ambulance. And I was in a deep sleep when she called. And it was like, okay. And I got up and I said to my husband, I got to go to the hospital. James is in the hospital. And he's like, what's going on? I said, I don't know. That's all I know. And I raced to the hospital. And I remember the drive to the hospital. And I felt like my heart was in my neck. It was like pulsating, like boom, ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. And I just kept telling myself, he's going to be okay. He's going to be okay. It's all fine. And then I got to the hospital. I saw the gravity of the situation because as soon as I arrived, I saw his other grandmother vomiting in a garbage can in the corner. And I saw, actually it was his mother was vomiting in the garbage can and the other grandmother was curled up in a corner and nobody was talking and my son was there watching the medical people work on him. And it was surreal. And I remember having this experience of this isn't happening. This isn't happening, right? And I just felt myself losing control of my emotions. I was just shaking uncontrollably. My teeth were chattering and I was shaking. I was scared. I was in a total state of fear. I was so afraid that something serious was going to happen to James. There's something awful, worse than what was already happening. And so I calmed myself down and I just thought, I got to focus. I got to focus on what's great. And I called my wonderful friend, Bob Proctor. And Bob said, listen, stop that right now. He said, I want you to see him, close your eyes, because I told him I was out biking with him, cycling with him the night before. And he said, see yourself out cycling with James, see yourself playing with James, see him laughing, dancing, happy, having fun. And that's all you give your attention to, regardless of what's going on. It's like, okay, Bob, okay, thank you, thank you. And so I'm at the hospital, I'm in the waiting room, they're doing test after test. And then they allowed me to go to see James just for a minute. And I walked in the room and I could see all these machines hooked up to him and they had Vaseline on his eyes because he was in a coma. And I'm not sure why they do that, but they do. And anyways, I saw him there. It was shocking for me to see him like that. And I left the room where James was and I went back into the meeting room and I just lost it. I just started crying like almost uncontrollably. And of course, anyone else that was there, other family members, they understood we were all going through our own issue. And I had to think back to what Bob said, right? And Bob said, focus, focus, focus. Okay. So I found that I was really measuring and monitoring my emotions consistently. And I really felt out of control. I really did. But I knew that the energy of focusing on what I didn't want wasn't going to serve me. It certainly wasn't going to serve him. And I talked to Kayla about it as well. And I said, here's what Bob suggests, because Bob had said, put your hand on him and close your eyes and send that energy to him and have him see it as well. And just do that now. Well, I couldn't get close to, I saw him for a minute, but it was Kayla and Michelle that were in with James all that time. So Kayla was doing it as well. Well, 3 days after this had happened, James actually came out of the coma. It took a couple more days for him to really come back to who he was before. So it was about 5-6 days before he was back. And thank God he came back. They never did find out what caused it. They don't see any abnormalities. They're not concerned about anything else. It was actually 2.5 years ago. Thankfully, there's been no reoccurrence of it whatsoever. But I mentioned that because that was a period of time or an experience that I went through personally where I was really struggling with manage my emotions. And I teach this stuff. I write about this stuff. So I just want you to know I have compassion for people who are in negative emotions. I was suicidal at one point in my life. I know what it feels like to be in a dark place, but I also know this, you can get out. Not only can you get out, you can create an amazing life, an incredible life, a fulfilling life, and have it be fulfilling in every way. But how you do that is by making a decision you're going to change your life, by making a decision you're going to focus more on the positive, by making a decision you're going to honor all of your emotions. And then when you feel those negative emotions coming up or rising up, recognize they're there for a reason. They're revealing something to you. Like when I think back to what I was feeling many, many years ago and this struggling teenager, the suicidal teenager, I realized that I was in a place of only focusing on what was wrong in my life, what was wrong with the world. And I had beliefs within me that were not positive. And so I realized I had to change them. So the positive side of negative emotions is realizing that there is a good side. There is an upside. If you're feeling a negative emotion, you can be feeling a positive emotion. Now you can learn from the negative emotion and say, where's that coming from? It could be just fear-based. It could be a paradigm or a belief that was created when you were young and you've just been holding on to it and it's time to let it go. Or it could be an opportunity for you to grow. I know that's what I did with my life. I made a decision that I'm going to change my life and I'm going to do it for my benefit initially. And then I decided I was so in love with the materials, so in love with positive change, that I incorporated a business and began my own company 26 years ago, as of today's date, that I would help others get out of emotional pain and or help them manifest the life of their dreams, whatever it is that they desire to do. So one of the tools that I created, or a resource, is this book called Your Destiny Switch, published by Hay House. And in this book, there's a couple things I want to point out and really bring light to, or shed some light to. There's a chapter in this book in one of the sections where I talk about your destiny switch and what it is and where that whole idea came from. And the idea came from recognizing that our emotions are like on a dimmer switch that go up and down. And if you're feeling really happy, well, you certainly won't be feeling sad. But if you are feeling sad, you've got an opportunity to raise up your energy level, your emotional level, and move to a state of happiness. So that's what it's in chapter 3. But also in chapter 3, I created something to help you understand the scale of human emotions. And the scale of human emotions is where I've mapped out a number of different emotions. There's 12 of them in total, but they all have varying degrees. For example, the emotion of love is at the highest end of the scale. At the lowest end of that scale would be hate, right? And if you're feeling hateful, well, you're certainly not feeling loving. But if you're feeling loving, you're not feeling hateful. But in between, there's different levels or varying degrees. Same thing with fear. At the other end of fear, what is there? Well, it could be worry, anxiousness, panic, fear, faith. At the top of the scale of faith, the opposite end is fear. Same thing with confidence. If you're feeling confident, you feel really good about who you are and you love yourself and you feel like your self-worth, you have self-worth. The opposite end of that would be insecurity, right? And same thing with calm. If you're calm, then you're relaxed. But if you're not, you're enraged. So there are different levels of emotions. And if you understand that and decide to work with it, it is wonderful. The other thing is that if you really start to imagine what's going on, if you're feeling impatience, as an example, you're feeling impatience, sometimes what that can mean for you is that you're not having faith. So what does that do? Well, it gives you an opportunity to turn up your volume of faith or to amplify the emotion of faith. So when you're feeling any of those negative emotions, sadness, frustration, insecurity, impatience, anger, guilt, worry, fear, whatever it is, just hopelessness, just recognize, hey, I know what that is. That's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for me to change the way I feel. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, you're the one that's in control of how you feel. The sooner you know that, the sooner you take control of that, the better it's going to go. Now, I believe what I'm talking about here, as far as measuring, monitoring, switching emotions, focusing on the positive emotions, is something that everyone should understand and be applying every single day. Every single day. Now, why would I say that? Well, because you're either creating or you're destroying. Every day you're creating or you're destroying. Now, you may have some days where you're creating and destroying all day long, right? Because you're going from positive to negative, positive to negative, positive to negative. A lot of people do that. But when you get consistent with this, when you discipline yourself enough to implement the tools that are inviting the positive emotions in, you'll get to a point where you do these things habitually, day after day after day. You'll find that you'll end up entering into a lane of positive emotions most of the time, the majority of the time. Now, I say that most of the time or the majority of the time because I've never met anyone who's actually feeling positive 100% of the time, including myself. Anytime I'm feeling negative emotion, I recognize that opportunity to switch over to a positive emotion. So I'll use things like questions that cause me to look at things a little differently and focus on things positively. One of my favorite questions of all is the question, what would I love? What would I love? What would I love? So I shift over from thinking about what I don't want over to thinking about what I do want. I do gratitude. I listen to my Power Life script multiple times every single day. I do journaling. I study visualization. I do affirmations. I do mirror work. It's all these things every single day. I'm measuring, monitoring, constantly paying attention to my emotions, because my emotions are going to determine what I'm feeling. My emotions are going to determine what I'm expressing as far as energy is concerned. And my emotions are going to determine what I'm attracting back into my life. So my suggestion for you is get a copy of your Destiny Switch, study it, maybe get a study partner that you could work with where you could study it together. Pay attention to your emotions, decide which emotions that you are required to focus on consistently that are going to invite the opportunities and the outcomes that you would desire to be experiencing in your life. It is the most valuable thing that you can do as it relates to you creating greater results for yourself, manifesting your dreams, accomplishing your goals, living a wonderful, fulfilled life. So if that's something that you would desire, do this wonderful work. It's such a blessing and it provides so many benefits to you in your life, not only with how you feel, but with what you're experiencing as well and how you're living your life. So that would be my recommendation to you. All right, so get a copy of your Destiny Switch, master your emotions, and you will be attracting the life of your dreams. Now, if you love our podcast, the Manifestation Podcast, please share it with your friends. Tell others about it. Share it with your clients. Share it with your prospects. Share it with your relatives. And leave us a 5-star review as well. It is always my pleasure to serve you. I love you. I care about you. I love bringing valuable ideas to you. And I just want you to know that I'm here for you. All right, I'll see you again in the next Manifestation Podcast.